Women only want to date men that will make them look good on social media. When did we get to the point that to be attractive to women, you either got to be a fitness model with a high six-figure income, or you got to be like a freaking stand-up comedian with charisma all the way maxed out? That also just so happens to look like a fitness model with a high six-figure income. Dating really is a humiliation ritual at this point. Unless you actually are rich with a male model face, if you want to get a date these days, you literally have to subject yourself to humiliation. I guess technically there is a way to attract women if you're not good looking, but it's cursed and you're probably not going to like it. We'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, it's like either you humiliate yourself on the apps, which is really just an exercise in futility, or you humiliate yourself in person by physically approaching hundreds of women just to probably get rejected by all of them. You know what it feels like going out in public and trying to meet women? It feels like panhandling, because it basically is the same thing. Just think about that for a second. The most common dating advice for men you always see online is that you gotta actually try to meet women in person. Like you gotta just approach as many women as you possibly can and hope that maybe one of them will agree to go out with you. Do you understand how ridiculous that is? People these days act like they're getting assaulted when the cashier at the grocery store says thank you. How do you think women are gonna react when my bald ass tries to romance them? I'd probably get pepper sprayed, or at the very least, somebody would call the cops on me. I guarantee none of the people giving that advice have actually tried it. There's no way anyone that's ever approached a woman as an average or below average man would ever recommend that as a valid strategy. Anyone that tells you to just approach dozens of women randomly until one agrees to date you, that person is trying to sabotage you. Or it's just a Chad or a woman that just doesn't know any better, I guess. That's also a possibility. I swear, the next time I hear someone talking about, you gotta approach 1,000 women if you want to have success, I'm throwing my computer out the window next time I hear that. And then I'm throwing myself out the damn window too, because if that's what it takes to get a date these days, then fuck it. I'll just live outside. If I'm going to be maidenless, I might as well be homeless too, I guess. I mean, what difference does it make anyways? Yeah, I might get cold in the winter. Okay, well, I mean, I guess that is a pretty good reason to stay indoors, but you get the point. That advice is ridiculous. And even if it was true that a guy like me could actually get with a woman, if only I approached 384 other women first, well, that's not even worth it. I'm not subjecting myself to humiliation time and time again just for the off chance that maybe eventually it might pay off and I'll find some super rare type of woman that'll actually want to go out with me. It's too much. It's just too much. People say if you're not physically attractive as a man, then your best chance at attracting women is through your personality. And I think it's probably true that if a guy's really funny or something, then that might be a bonus. Women might find a guy a little bit more attractive if he's funny, all else being equal. But no amount of personality and no amount of humor is going to make up for being ugly. Personality is just a bonus if you're already physically attractive. Think of it like this. Personality is like the bonus problem on an exam. If the bonus problem is the only question you get right, then you're still going to fail the exam. Okay, so I'm pretty sure I don't need to work on my personality. That's not my problem. That's not going to help me. Women these days just have way too high standards, which is funny because has anyone else ever noticed that it's men that get told all the time to lower their standards? That is a very common piece of advice you hear whenever a man expresses woe about his inability to attract women, people say, well, maybe you need to lower your standards. Like, a guy will be average in every conceivable way, but he'll still be steadily getting rejected by 1 out of 10s and 2 out of 10s and 3 out of 10s in person and on the apps. He'll just be getting rejected left and right, this totally average man. And people have the audacity to tell him, maybe you should lower your standards. Listen, at this point, my standards are already at the bottom. If they go any lower, we'll be digging through the bedrock, okay? Like, my standards cannot be lower. And it's not my standards that are the problem here. Generally speaking, men do not have crazy high standards. It's women that have high standards. Every woman thinks she deserves a millionaire with a six-pack. Meanwhile, the average woman in the United States is 5'3", 170 pounds. Okay? That's fat. I know it's not like super obese or anything. I would gladly date a woman with those stats. I'm sure there's plenty of women out there at that size that are still attractive, probably some that are very attractive. But I'm just saying, ladies, if you are average yourself, then don't expect to get with Henry Cavill. But they do. Not literally Henry Cavill, but it is true that even ugly women think they're going to end up with Prince Charming. And unfortunately, part of the reason for that is because too many guys these days that actually are attractive, guys that do live up to women's insane standards, too often a lot of these guys will voluntarily debase themselves by giving these average and below average women more attention than they deserve because, hey, it's easy. It's just convenient. It's a lot easier to date down as a man because of how lopsided women's standards are. And obviously, most men like to get around if they can. Okay, most of us definitely can't these days, but it is natural for a man to want to spread his seed around if he can. Okay, I think that's just a natural state of being a man. So what ends up happening is a lot of highly attractive men do date down, or they at least boink down, if not actually dating. But they do it with a lot of different women, including women that should never be expecting to get anywhere near an attractive man. Like, a man could be a legit 8 out of 10 in looks with a top 1% income, and he'll still probably at least once or twice get on Tinder or one of the apps, and he'll just hook up with a female goblin just because he can. Maybe he just doesn't feel like putting in the effort that it would take to pull a more attractive girl. So he just rolls around in the mud a little bit, He just gets on Tinder, finds a goblin that should be reserved for guys like me. But some total Chad will give a woman like that attention, he'll give it to her one time and, so average women end up thinking that they're on Chad's level. So then they look at an average guy like me and it's already over. Okay. I have no chance. There's no chance. I know that it cannot have been this bad back in the day, like when my parents were my age, because online dating and just the ease of access that the internet provides, that has really changed the game. Back in the day, more average women were willing to get with average guys because back then they didn't all have an instant validation device in their pocket at all times. So they weren't constantly getting notifications about matching with Chad from 2 towns over. They couldn't see how many guys liked their latest selfie. And they wouldn't be constantly comparing themselves to the fake lifestyles they see people projecting on social media. Always trying to be more popular, desperately trying to get some attention at any cost. People's impressions of things these days are just warped. Just all kinds of out of whack. Everybody's trying to live up to these highly inflated standards. And one of the biggest flexes for a woman nowadays and in the past is her man. Okay, women love to show off their ability to attract high value men. But the man a woman's dating can also be seen as a negative. So here's an enormous dark colored capsule for you. Women only want to date men that will make them look good on social media. But everything's so exaggerated on social media, everything's fake, everyone's flexing to the extreme. So it's not just that you have to live up to high standards, you have to literally live up to these superhuman standards to attract women these days, because you have to live up to the standards of social media. And something I've noticed is that most men will lower their standards if they have to. For example, there's a guy I went to high school with. He was very popular. He was the starting running back on the football team. He hooked up with a lot of girls, a lot of the popular girls at our school. And I remember he dated a girl for about a year that was literally the hottest girl in the school. Well, within maybe 7 to 8 years after graduating, this guy had gained a lot of weight. He was working at some basic manufacturing job. You know, he basically went from being a Chad to being average in a matter of a few years. Well, he did end up getting married. He actually got married to a girl we went to school with. And I'd say she looks about the same as she did back in school. Obviously, she's older now, but she looks about the same. Well, here's the thing. This girl is not good looking. She never was. She was one of those weird girls that seemed kinda antisocial. Like, she was openly hostile to people for no reason. And I think she identified as Wiccan back in the day, which, if you don't know, it's basically the same thing as being non-binary. But, you know, back in the day, this all-American jock would have never even given this chick the time of day. I don't know if he even knew who she was back then. I mean, he probably did because it was a really small school. Pretty much everybody knew everybody else, but she was so far below this guy's level back then. But now they're married. They got married less than 10 years after graduating. And like I said, she did not have a glow up or anything like that. All that happened was the guy got less attractive. He went from Chad to average. So he couldn't get with hot girls anymore. That just wasn't an option for him anymore. So he adjusted his standards. And he married this woman that is easily still below his looks match. But that's the best he can get, I guess. So the point is, men typically will adjust their standards and date down if they have to, because men tend to be relatively realistic about these things. But I've noticed that it doesn't work the other way around. Most women will just stay single if they can't get with the man they want. Women don't want to date down, and they're not willing to date down either. They're not even willing to date laterally. Part of that, I think, is because most women still do get a decent amount of attention from men that they are actually attracted to, even if those men would not actually commit. But women still get attention, and they can still get laid with men they're attracted to, so they don't feel the need to settle. Even if deep down they know none of those men are actually going to ever commit to them, they still get that validation. They still get some dopamine. They get some intimacy. They, get their oxytocin going and everything. So that's one reason that women don't adjust their standards. But also, I think a lot of women just don't care about romantic relationships. I honestly think a lot of women these days, especially millennials and the younger generation, a lot of women are just 100% focused on themselves and their career and their own ambitions. They just don't feel like there's anything missing in their life. So, yeah, they'd probably be on board if their dream man approached them, but otherwise, they're just not even trying to date. They just see average men like me as a distraction or a nuisance, even. So, in a lot of ways, I think a woman's career replaces her desire for a family. Because also, women get a lot of support in the workplace. If you've ever worked in, especially like in a white collar office environment, women get treated like special needs kids, basically. Fully capable adult women that should be able to take responsibility for their own actions, they just get treated with kid gloves. I've literally seen a woman cry at work because she was trying to grill this guy during a meeting. Then he defended himself, and I guess it wasn't going the way she expected. So this woman just starts crying, and then everyone started to comfort her. And then later on, one of the higher ups in the company that was there when she broke down, he went up to her later in private just to comfort her some more and reassure her that she's doing a great job, which she was not, by the way. She broke down and started crying and kind of, obviously that's not doing a great job. And I'm pretty sure if it was me or any other man that just broke down crying like that in the middle of a meeting, we would just get fired or we'd get reprimanded or something. Because it wasn't like she just got some tears in her eyes and she tried to push through anyways. It wasn't anything like that. No, she just fully broke down and she was saying things like, I always screw everything up. Like, she was demanding attention, okay? She was making a scene, making it all about herself. She brought the whole meeting to a screeching halt just to refocus all the attention on herself. I think she was actually trying to distract from the fact that she kind of lost an argument, if you could even call it that. It really wasn't a big deal, but it's kind of crazy to think how doing that didn't even slightly affect this woman's career, even in the short term. If a man acted that same way, everybody would say he was acting crazy. People would be concerned about him. People would feel unsafe around a man like that. They'd think he's unhinged. There's no telling what he'll do next. Can you imagine being in a meeting and some guy just starts bawling and demanding attention like, well, I'll never get it right. I'm so worthless. They'd probably place him on medical leave for that. Like he had a psychiatric episode or something. He might be forcibly committed, which would probably be a fair assessment. But this woman at my old job literally did this, and if anything, it probably just made people like her more because a lot of these oofy doofies I worked with were probably praying for a chance to comfort this chick. And I already know, every single one of you listening to this, you're probably able to think of a moment in your own life where you saw something like this happen. Because it's just a fact. Women be crying at work. Women break down and cry and throw tantrums and stuff at work. And I'm not saying a man, it's not like no man ever does that. There are crazy men in this world that are bipolar or whatever, and they can't control their emotions, but they get fired. But women just get comforted. Men get fired. Women get comforted. Okay? Facts. Let it sink in. Men get fired. Women get comforted. It's bullshit. But anyways, the reason I tell this story is just to illustrate how, with the way a lot of women get treated in the workplace these days, women are getting all their emotional needs met. Like all the emotional support and everything that a person traditionally would be getting from their immediate family and their close friends, women can actually get that in the workplace. Or they can get a cheap substitution for that. It's not going to be like the real thing. It's not going to be as good as actually like your immediate family comforting you. But, they get a cheap substitution of that, which isn't an option for men. And just in general, societally speaking, women get a lot of support. Okay, there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of groups out there to help women in need. And I'm not against these things, like charity and even welfare programs and everything, depending on what it is. I think it's great for our society to have support systems like that for people that need it. But the problem is that a lot of those support systems, probably most of them, only exist for women. Okay, men don't get those support systems. And I think that's an important but often unspoken factor that plays into all this, plays into why women's standards seem to be through the fucking roof these days. It's just all the support women get, not only socially, although that is a big part of it, just the social affirmation, but all the affirmative action, the female-only scholarships, special support programs for homeless women. Everywhere you go, people are talking about empowering women. As a man, I don't know, but I feel like maybe I'd feel a bit more secure in my position in life if I had all of those support systems. If people just by default treated me like I have value as a human being, instead of treating me like I'm a monster or a creep, if I had that, then I probably would feel less pain from being alone. That's got to count for something. So most women just don't care as much about partnering up with a man as men do about partnering up with women. Not to the degree that they'd be willing to lower their standards just to not be single. Obviously, most women would prefer to be with the man of their dreams as opposed to being alone, but they're not going to settle for less than that. Maybe they'll settle a little bit, but not much. I really don't think I'd be too out of line to say that most women these days would probably never settle for their looks match. But most men probably would settle for a much less attractive woman. That's how it is. Women just naturally have that abundance mindset because they are living with an abundance of options. Meanwhile, most men, on the other hand, are desperate. We're just out here begging for crumbs. Because you got to think, too, you're not just competing with all the men in your area. When you think about any female that you might have a crush on, or just any female in your potential dating pool, you're competing with every man in the world, essentially. In her mind, that's how they see it. When your Tinder profile pops up on her screen, you don't get any benefits for proximity. You're just another guy on the screen. So you better believe she's gonna be comparing you to every other man she's ever seen on that screen. Okay, she's comparing you to fitness models that she's seen on Instagram. She's comparing you to freaking Chris Pratt. And of course, she's also comparing you to all the other guys in your local proximity. So the level of competition these days is just insane. If you think about how it must have been back in like the 70s, 80s, 90s, back then, a guy would only be competing with other real-life guys. And really, you'd only be competing with other guys that have also physically approached that same woman. So your chances were always way better just from a numbers standpoint. But now, every man in the world can approach every woman in the world, essentially. So the competition is insane. Like, it's one thing to be in the top 10% of the most attractive guys out of just like the 500 guys in your local area that are in your age range. But now you have to be in the top 10% globally to make a positive impression. Or not necessarily globally, but the area's a lot larger, like a whole lot larger. A woman's potential dating pool these days is, it really is pretty much global. What's the difference anyways in competing amongst 50,000 versus competing amongst 5 million? The odds are fucked either way, So, for those of you that haven't been paying attention, the way the math works out, most men these days will never live up to women's inflated standards. Most men, okay? I'm being serious now. I really think this is true. Most men, as in more than 50% of all men alive today, will never live up to a woman's standards. Some of those men might get married. They might beta bucks for a broad, but actually living up to a woman's standards, I don't see that happening for most men. There's too much working against us. Near the beginning of the video, I teased the fact that there is a way to attract women if you don't meet their standards. And what it is first, you got to focus on blind women. And this is key. Now, this is women we're talking about, so of course, there's probably some special support groups for blind women you should be able to find. No, I'm just joking. I'm joking, okay? That's just a joke. But seriously, you can potentially attract certain women just by having enough money and enough social proof. Really, social proof is the biggest thing, but good luck getting the social proof without money if you're not good looking. So, money is essential to this. So if you can manage to accumulate some wealth or land some hotshot job, and if you actually somehow have excellent social skills, even though you're ugly, which is rare, but, I'm sure it happens. In that case, with the combination of social skills and riches, then maybe you can attract a certain type of woman even if you're ugly. But it's still not going to be real attraction. At best, she'll just be attracted to your mind, which I guess would be better than nothing, but it's cursed, obviously. I think every man knows deep down that if she's not attracted to you physically, then there's really no attraction there at all. But yeah, women's standards are just insane these days. Most of us just aren't even in the game anymore at this point. If you feel like you got any value out of listening to this, I don't know how, but, even if you just found this entertaining, I really appreciate it a lot. Please check out some of my other videos. I have a lot of videos on this channel. If you like this one, it's almost guaranteed you'd like some of my other videos too. I also have some super secret special videos available on my Patreon for free. You don't even have to sign up. You can just click play and watch them. You don't even have to put in an email. You can just watch the videos. Okay, so that's on my Patreon. And thank you to everyone that watches these videos. I really appreciate the support. See you next time.